Well, everybody, Mike Griffith here, and welcome to a special presentation, I guess. We're doing a live hit right after Kirby Smart and player availability here from the UGA campus, and just finished talking with Darnell Washington and Christopher Smith. I know that Warren McClendon also appeared, wasn't able to get to him today, but I want to bring you some of the ideas and thoughts. Kirby Smart ready, locked in and locked out. I guess that's the saying that Kirby says that he has for this year's team as they go into 12 or 11, 12 days of isolation into the Georgia Center there, where everybody stays focused on football and they don't really have to worry too much about classes this early in the process. Now, Kirby pointed out that used to be fall camp was when everybody was working, back into camp, but now during the summer they have the opportunities to work out together. So now it's really just taking it up a whole nother level. And Kirby said that he met with us and talked to some NFL folks about, how do you take it from that summer level into fall camp? And certainly the focus was clear. I guess that's the word I keep coming back over and over to that I heard from Kirby Smart was focus, focus, focus. And to the point where somebody asked him about Dan Lanning in Oregon, and Kirby said he had a million things to worry about before he was worried about Dan Lanning in Oregon. I mean, Georgia, a lot of things to work out on their own. A couple injury updates. It sounds like Tate Ratledge is doing well. Kirby made the point that the fall practices, the fall drills, actually less strenuous than some of the things Ratledge was doing this summer. And, as most of you that follow Georgia closely are aware, Tate Ratledge, pretty pivotal on that offensive line. It still needs to get some football skills back, maybe a little rusty after missing most of last year. But Kirby seemed confident that we would get Ratledge back in the flow this season. We would see that. Very powerful run blocker. You guys remember he started out last year as the starter at right guard, was injured on that first series against Clemson. So that's going to be interesting to see to what extent Tate Ratledge can go and how early he's competing for a starting job in there. In the mix with Warren Erickson and Xavier Truss at those guard positions. Kirby mentioned Devin Willock. He mentioned Michael Morris, Dylan Fairchild. A lot of guys inside of the guard position. One of the more physically demanding spots in the SEC when you look at the kind of guys they've got to line up against from the Alabamas of the world, provided Georgia gets to the SEC championship game as we think they will. But, even South Carolina, Auburn, the SEC test, Tennessee, Kentucky, that guard position really has to have the power to move people out and be able to sustain those attacks from those powerful defensive tackles out there like the Jordan Davises and the Devontae Wyatts of the world. Tyke Smith, Kirby said that the safety, the former West Virginia All-American, who had the season-ending knee injury last year, you guys might remember, Tyke was one of the more anticipated additions to last year's team, and he had the foot injury in fall camp, came back from that for about a game, I want to say the Auburn game, and then the season-ending ACL. Now Tyke is back. He's able to do most things. Kirby said it's just a matter of Tyke Smith getting comfortable and confident with that knee, being out of a knee brace. So pretty interesting to hear that Tyke Smith back in the mix, probably maybe even more than I would have anticipated. And the safety spot opposite of Christopher Smith, I mean, you lose a lot with a first-round guy like Lewis Seen moving on to the NFL, the Minnesota Vikings. So who's going to be that guy? I guess Dan Jackson is one of the candidates, but we heard some incoming players, really Malachi Starks, Ja'Cory Thomas. These are two guys that Kirby said felt got some really valuable reps in the spring that are going to be able to, perhaps compete for playing time at that safety spot. David Daniel, another guy in the mix. We mentioned Tyke Smith. We know he plays the star. Might he also play the safety next to Christopher? Pretty interesting. And Dan Jackson, that's one of those areas you look at and you wonder who's going to be the guy next to Christopher Smith. A lot of competition for playing time there. And another guy's name who came up a lot today was Smile Munden. This is a guy athletically that Christopher Smith says just off the charts. And Darnell Washington, when I asked him who's some of the best, most athletic linebackers he faced were, and that was the name that he mentioned as well. So I think that bodes well. When I asked Kirby about the inside linebackers, a position where you lose a Quay Walker, you lose a Channing Tindall, you lose a Nakobe Dean, and you might think that's a weakness. But Kirby said he's actually really excited about these guys. Said he was excited about them last year too, but they were behind such great players that they really didn't get the kind of opportunities that he would have hoped that they would have gotten. But playing behind great players, they were able to get a lot of reps. So I don't think Kirby's as worried maybe about the inside linebacker position as a lot of outsiders might be. I look at Smile Munden here, just looking at his bio, and what a fantastic athlete he is. You heard from Jeff Santel during his recruitment from Paulding County, where he played quarterback, running back, and wide receiver. Had over 1,000 all-purpose yards as an offensive player, now playing on defense. I think this is one of these rising star guys, certainly one of the All-Americans, high school All-Americans, but this is a rising star to really keep an eye on, is Smile Munden, a name that we heard quite a bit of today. Listening to Darnell Washington, I did write this down, because we got to talking about the athleticism, who are some of the guys that are the best athletes on the team, and I said to Darnell, I said, well, who would be your starting five, your starting basketball five off the Georgia football team? Of course, himself. Darnell, 6'7", 275. I mean, he looks great. Amarius Mims was a name that he mentioned. Jalen Carter was a name that he mentioned. Jonathan Jefferson, how about that? Jonathan Jefferson getting some love from Darnell Washington. And Nyland Green, cornerback. Really, the only little guy he mentioned was Nyland Green, and we know Nyland Green is going to be competing with Dylan Everett and Kamari Lassiter for that cornerback position opposite of Keely Ringo. That's going to be one of the key positions for Georgia to fill. Kirby, of course, asked about complacency again, and he said there have been years when he's been worried about complacency, but this isn't one of them, because this team doesn't have any reason to be complacent, in the sense of a lot of these guys didn't play last year, so they're hungry. Where he's been on championship teams before at Alabama, where he had guys returning that might get complacent. So he said, you're not really worried about the first-year starters. You worry about the guys that have been there and done it, and I don't really think that's an issue for this Georgia football team. Obviously, a lot of competition in the ranks, whether we're talking about the running back position, even out there at receiver. Something interesting to note, we've all kind of wondered how many multi-tight end sets we might see, maybe 3 tight ends, 2-3 tight ends at a time, right? Where you could line guys like Eric Gilbert and Brock Bowers up in the slot. We asked Darnell, what's the one word you would use to describe the tight ends? Mismatch. Who's going to cover these guys? Where are the linebackers? Where are the safeties? If you're fast enough, are you big enough? If you're big enough, are you fast enough? And when Kirby was asked specifically about Kearis Jackson, and he talked about Kearis being a program guy, senior, captain, all that good stuff, but said that Kearis would be competing with tight ends. When he's on the field, a tight end's not, right? So to me, that's kind of the giveaway that you might see a lot of 3 tight end sets, 13 personnel, where you see that tight ends maybe even lined up in the slot. We'll call him tight. You can call Brock Bowers a tight end all you want, but he's probably going to be more of a slot receiver, I think, as we see guys like Oscar Delp continue to emerge. As I said, Darnell looks amazing. Kirby went out of his way to praise Darnell Washington. 6'7", 275, and you guys have seen that Darnell can make those catches, those contested catches in traffic. So you think about the size, you think about the power that Georgia brings to the offense. When you have players like this, then it just becomes a matter of Stetson Bennett doing the job, right? Making the right reads, making these accurate passes, making good decisions. I know everybody wants to see Stetson do a better job with decision making. Kirby talked about that. Munkins talked about that. Stetson now, a 24-year-old former walk-on. He'll turn 25 this year. He's a 6th-year player. So you've got a veteran quarterback with some guys that I think are almost impossible to cover. That bodes really well for this offense. When you've got this kind of depth and power and athleticism, and you could just sense Kirby's confidence today. I mean, if somebody asked him about could this be viewed as a rebuilding year, I think we all heard Nick Saban said yesterday that last year was a rebuild for Alabama. Look, it was. I don't know why people are getting upset. They lost 6 first-round picks, and they had a first-year quarterback. Yeah, that's very much a rebuild when you lose 6 first-round picks. And you could say the same about Georgia with losing 5 first-round guys off defense, right? And yet Kirby says, you don't really go into the year saying that or thinking it, maybe reflecting back. Like right now, Kirby's not thinking rebuild. He likes the players that he has. He likes the way these guys have worked out. He likes the team attitude. There's a really good vibe. You could just tell talking with the players today. There's a quiet confidence. This team knows they haven't done it yet. So, the fans can wear the champion shirts and the defending this and defending that. But the mindset here is these guys have to go out and get theirs, right? They haven't done anything yet in 2022. And that's kind of the process, the thought process. We've heard Cedric Van Pran, of course, in the spring kind of alerted us to that they don't want to see any championship stuff from 2021 in their facility on their field. It's really about this team and what does this team do. And I think Kirby has successfully got that mindset built into his team. So trying to look at some of the other notes that we saw off here. Kirby has not seen the Stetson Bennett haircut yet. I don't know if you've seen the makeover of Stetson Bennett, but apparently Stetson not the only guy who has gotten the buzz cut. So this is part of the lock-in and lock-out, Kirby said, part of that mindset that everybody's all in. I did want to mention in the running back room, Kirby said that Dajon Edwards was a guy that he wanted to learn a lot more about, said he was a bit of an unknown. I think we all saw Dajon Edwards get that mop-up duty in fourth quarter play. He's going to have a bigger role, so this is going to be a challenge for Dajon. We know that Georgia's brought in some really talented freshmen. They're going to try to compete, but obviously Dajon Edwards now, I believe this is this year 3 for Dajon already? Year 3, yeah. And this is a guy who's got experience, who's going to get more opportunities. So Kirby said he felt better about offensive tackle position than the offensive guard position. Thought that was really interesting. And just going over my notes again. Says Xavier Sori's come a long way at linebacker. He mentioned him, mentioned Tresman. He said you look across the linebacker group as a whole, and Kirby sees this as a strength. Says he's excited about what these guys can do. So no real changes in the tight end group, Kirby said. Higher execution. These guys are all pretty familiar with the offense. Obviously Delp is newer, but for the most part, these guys are all familiar with what their job is to do at tight end, and Kirby felt really confident about that. Gosh, I think that was about it. I want to see if you guys have any questions here before I cut this short. And our post here from UGA, post Kirby Smart press conference. Let's see if we have any questions coming in here. No, not really, not yet. See Shannon Duncan with a comment, excited for the season. A lot of Georgia fans. How can you not be excited? It's finally here, right? The first day of practice. So again, these guys have been working out throughout the whole off season, but now they're on the field for the first time wearing the helmets. And of course, next week you'll get into the contact, and that's where these guys will really separate as the clock counts down. I mean, September 3rd, Oregon, very interesting matchup against Dan Lanning, a guy that knows all their personnel, that knows all their schemes. But I'll repeat it, as Kirby Smart said, 1,000,000 battles to fight before Dan Lanning, before the Oregon Ducks. A lot of questions that need to be answered on the practice field that can only be answered in practice. So that's something to keep an eye out for. We'll have some practice viewing this afternoon. Connor Riley, I believe there's already content up on dognation.com if you want to read the live updates in the live blog. Connor has posted that. I had some questions on some storylines this morning, some questions that I answered during this brief update post Kirby Smart press conference. And we'll be doing more of this throughout the fall. Certainly you tune in every day, 10:15. You got Brandon Adams and Dog Nation Daily. I do a Monday night show called On the Beat if you want to join me next Monday night. And Jeff Santel goes Wednesday night. So we'll be having a lot more cool programming from Dog Nation. Appreciate you joining me. Hope everybody has a wonderful Thursday and into the weekend.